They thought it was over. The cops high-fived in court, proud of the setup that brought Maya Ellison down. But as they soaked in victory, she stood unshaken and dropped 5 words that froze the room. "I'm the FBI director." How did the woman they framed turn out to be the one holding all the power? Like this story shares it forward and follow along as the truth unfolds. It was a moment the students would never forget. Dr. Maya Ellison stood at the center of the lecture hall in Building C, her voice calm, her words deliberate. She wasn't reading off a script, she was speaking from experience. Her topic that morning, the silent collapse of justice when law turns against the people. A fitting title in hindsight. Dozens of students, some recording, some scribbling notes, hung on her every word. Maya wasn't just any guest. She was a leading expert in criminal justice reform with 20 years in the field, a best-selling book, and invitations from universities across the country. Her presence commanded the room, not because she demanded it, but because truth tends to do that. And then the doors slammed open. St. Haven Police. "Everyone stay seated." 2 officers barged in, Brent Doyle, bulky white, his hand already gripping the holster at his side. And next to him, Kyle Torres, wiry younger, clearly following Doyle's lead. The students jolted. One girl shrieked. Maya paused mid-sentence and turned to face them, expression unchanged. Doyle's boots echoed on the tile floor as he stormed toward her. "Dr. Maya Ellison," he barked, "you are under arrest for possession of a controlled substance with intent to distribute." Gasps, phones raised. One kid dropped his notebook. "Wait, what?" a student shouted from the front row. "You've got the wrong person," another yelled. Doyle didn't even blink. "Hands behind your back. Now." Maya didn't move. She met Doyle's eyes, calm, steady. Then, without a word, she slowly turned and placed her hands behind her back. Not resisting, not pleading. Just cooperating. That unsettled him. "You think this is some kind of joke?" Doyle muttered as he cuffed her rougher than necessary. "We'll see if you're still smug at County." A few students began shouting. "This is insane. She's a professor, not a dealer. I'm recording this. This is so wrong." Torres moved to Maya's bag on the desk. Without hesitation, he reached in and pulled out a small black pouch she hadn't even touched since arriving. He held it up, opened it, and slowly withdrew a Ziploc bag containing a white, powdery substance. "Bingo," he said loud enough for the room to hear. Maya glanced at the bag but still said nothing. Students erupted. "That wasn't there 5 minutes ago." "She didn't even open that bag. They're planting it." Everyone's filming. One student, Layla, a political science major, took a shaky step forward. "She's literally been talking non-stop. That bag's been sitting there the whole time. Are you seriously trying to pull this off in front of a room full of witnesses?" Doyle turned, sneered. "Back in your seat, miss, before you make this worse." Layla didn't move. Torres gave Doyle a nervous look. "Maybe we should..." But Doyle cut him off. "She's not walking out of here. This one's done." He yanked Maya by the arm. She stumbled but caught herself, straightening almost instantly. Still no words from her. Only that look. Not fear, not anger, not even shock. It was something worse. Knowing. Doyle must have felt it. He leaned in and whispered low enough that only Maya could hear. "What are you smiling at?" She didn't respond. That only made him angrier. They pulled her through the classroom aisle. The room buzzed with disbelief and outrage. A student shouted, "You can't just drag someone out without cause." Another yelled, "The whole thing's being streamed live." Still, Maya stayed silent. At the door, she glanced back just once, scanning the faces. Some looked confused, others horrified. A few were crying. One boy held his phone in the air, still streaming, and whispered, "This ain't justice. This is a setup." Maya's eyes lingered on him for half a second. Then she turned away. Outside the hallway echoed with boots and shocked murmurs. Torres, carrying the so-called evidence bag, looked pale. "Brent, something's off." Doyle snapped stick to the script. "We don't get another shot at this." "Yeah, but what if—" "She's not who you think she is," Doyle muttered, jaw tight. "She's dangerous, not because she carries drugs, but because she opens mouths that should stay shut." They shoved Maya into the back seat of the cruiser. She sat upright, wrists cuffed, eyes closed for a moment. And then softly, so soft only Torres caught it, she exhaled a quiet sentence. "Every camera saw you." Back in the lecture hall, a hush fell over the students. Layla stood frozen near the podium, staring at the empty space where Maya had stood. Another student played back the live stream. You could hear Doyle's voice. Hear the moment the bag was pulled out. Hear the crowd's reactions. "What if—" Layla whispered. She let it happen. Silence. And then someone else said, she didn't look scared. Not once. Maya Ellison left that building in handcuffs. But she didn't walk out defeated. She walked out with something they didn't expect. A plan. The patrol car door slammed shut behind her. Maya sat in the back seat, wrists still cuffed, her breathing slow and steady. Outside the campus buzzed students yelling, phones raised footage already flying across the internet. Inside the cruiser, silence lingered for a moment too long. Then Doyle broke it. Well, he sneered, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. Guess this'll teach you to run your mouth about justice. Maya didn't blink. Doyle chuckled under his breath. You people always think you're smarter than the system. Always preaching like anyone's listening. Torres sat quietly beside him in the passenger seat, eyes straight ahead, but his jaw twitched. Doyle turned slightly. You know, if you'd stuck to teaching your little essays, maybe we wouldn't be here. But no. You had to stir the pot. Still, Maya didn't respond, just stared out the window. You're quiet now. Doyle went on, his voice tightening. What happened to all those big words, huh? Those TED Talks, the think pieces. He leaned back slightly. You ever think maybe you belong behind bars just like the rest of them? Torres finally spoke low, smooth. Ease up, Brent. Doyle scoffed. Don't tell me you're soft on this one. Torres didn't reply, but Maya knew something neither of them did, because tucked inside the third button of her blouse just below her collarbone was a fiber-thin mic wirelessly transmitting everything to a secure server in DC. The static of Doyle's hate, the silence of Torres's complicity, every word and every sneer, they were all being recorded. She didn't need to defend herself. They were burying themselves. Back at the station, while Doyle filled out the paperwork with unnecessary slams of the keyboard, Maya sat in holding, surrounded by cinderblock walls and stale air. Torres hovered outside, glancing at her through the window. Something about her still bothered him. Not the charges. Not even the arrest, but the way she hadn't flinched once. She wasn't confused. She wasn't panicking. She was waiting. Flashback. 1 week earlier. A dimly lit federal briefing room. A man in a gray suit slid a folder across the table. Precinct 7 has a pattern. 13 black defendants in 8 months. Same charges, same arresting officers, all dismissed later due to insufficient evidence. But the damage was done. Reputations ruined. Records tainted. He looked Maya in the eyes. We think they're planting drugs and covering it up internally. Maya nodded once. I'll go in. Another agent frowned. You understand what that means, Director Ellison? I do. That's why it has to be me. Present holding cell. The room was cold, harshly lit, but Maya sat like she was in her own living room. Her internal voice was calm, measured. People think power is in noise, yelling, protesting, demanding, but real power is in silence. When you say nothing, they keep talking, and eventually they say everything you need. She closed her eyes briefly. Imlang lavuhi? Outside, Doyle was gloating. He pulled Torres aside, laughing. We got her good. The DA's gonna eat this up. Finally, someone they can't cry race card over. Torres hesitated. You sure this won't blow back? Doyle raised an eyebrow. You worried now? No, Torres lied. Just covering our bases. Doyle slapped him on the shoulder. Relax. She's done. By tomorrow, no one's gonna remember her name. In her cell, Maya smiled, because tomorrow the whole country would know it. It started with the mugshot. The harsh white light. The cold wall behind her. The soulless click of the camera. Maya stood still, eyes focused, lips shut. She looked neither guilty nor afraid, just tired. Not of what was happening, but of the system that allowed it. Then came the fingerprints. Ink pressed into every crease of her skin, like she was nothing more than a file in a drawer. No gloves, no kindness, no words. Just a system doing what it had been trained to do, crush anything it didn't understand. Officer Torres hovered near the terminal as a young clerk typed Maya's name into the state database. The room was quiet. A printer hummed somewhere in the back. The air smelled of stale coffee and policy. The clerk frowned. That's odd. What Torres asked. She hit enter again. Then again, the same result flashed on the screen. Access denied. Level 4. Classified. Restricted by federal authority. Do not pursue. She shifted in her seat. It's locked. Torres leaned over her shoulder. What do you mean, locked? I can't pull her record. I've never seen this tag before. It's federal. Doyle appeared behind them. Problem. The clerk turned the screen toward him. This is what comes up when I search her name. Doyle squinted at the screen, his jaw clenched. He looked back through the glass window toward the holding cells where Maya sat alone, still, silent. Run her through the manual process, Doyle barked. We're not stalling this over some computer glitch. They led Maya down a narrow hallway with peeling paint and flickering lights. At the end was a steel door behind it. A bare holding cell, no cot, no sink, just 4 cold walls and a camera in the corner. As the door shut behind her, there was a hiss of the lock. No one said a word. An hour passed, then 2. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was weaponized. Maya sat on the floor, legs crossed back straight. She didn't shift, didn't fidget. But her thoughts weren't quiet. In her mind, memories stirred. Not of the courtroom, not of lectures, but of Kandahar. 2017. Dust. Heat. Screams in the night. And a girl, no older than 16, bleeding, crying, lost. Maya had carried her on her back through a checkpoint while bullets chased their shadows. That girl had lived, and now, years later, the door to the cell creaked open. A woman shuffled in, older, skin leathered from too many nights on concrete, hair wild, hands trembling slightly from something stronger than age. She looked at Maya, paused, squinted, and then her face lit up. No way, she whispered. Maya looked up, not startled, just curious. The woman took a shaky step forward. It's you? It's really you? Maya said nothing. You saved my baby, she said, voice cracking. Kandahar, 2017, my daughter Mariah. You carried her across that checkpoint. I saw your face, I never forgot it. For a moment, time folded in on itself. The cell, the cameras, the cuffs, they all faded. All that remained was a mother's voice. I thought you were a ghost or something. They said you were just a soldier. But I knew. I knew. The woman dropped to her knees, eyes filled with tears. What are you doing in here? Still Maya didn't speak. But for the first time, her eyes softened. Moisture pooled in the corner. Not from pain, not from shame, from memory. The woman crawled closer, whispering like a child. You're not one of them. You're one of us. Maya met her gaze, and nodded just once. It was the first acknowledgement she had given anyone since the arrest. Outside the holding block, Torres stood watching the security feed. He saw it all, the woman recognizing Maya. The tears, the silent nod. He exhaled slowly, and for the first time since the arrest, doubt crept in. Meanwhile, Doyle was already talking to Internal Affairs. He wasn't concerned about doubts. He was preparing for applause. But what he didn't know was that the woman in cell 6 wasn't alone. She was documented, protected, watched by people who operated above his badge, above his state. And that glitch on the database, that was just the beginning. They sent him in like it was routine. Gray suit, half wrinkled, leather briefcase that looked older than him. Vincent Kellerman didn't even look up when he walked through the holding room door. He just exhaled and opened his folder like he was reviewing lunch options, not someone's future. Dr. Ellison, he said flatly, we don't need to drag this out. The DA is offering a plea deal. No jail time, just probation. You sign it, you're out of here in an hour. Maya sat still on the cold bench. Her hands rested in her lap, calm as ever. Kellerman glanced up for the first time and seemed almost puzzled by her silence. No anger, no desperation, just poise. You do understand what's happening here, right? They've got drugs in your bag. A dozen students saw you get cuffed. You're black. This is St. Haven. He paused, leaned forward. Pleading guilty is the smart play. Maya looked at him long and steady. Did Vincent Hale send you? That stopped him. His mouth opened slightly, then closed again. He looked away. I thought so, she said softly. You work for the DA's office before you became a public defender, right? He shifted in his seat. That was a long time ago. Maya leaned back. I'm not signing anything. I want a trial, and I want cameras. Kellerman blinked. That's suicide. No, she said. That's sunlight. There was a beat of silence. Then he scoffed. Look, you seem smart, but smart people don't gamble with a jury in this county. They smile, sign, and walk out. Maya's tone never rose. I didn't come here to walk out quietly. He studied her. Something in her eyes made him pause again. The way she held herself like someone who knew exactly what game they were playing and who all the players were. You know, he muttered half to himself, they said you were just a guest speaker, a professor. But you're not afraid. Not even a little. What are you really? She didn't answer. But something in that silence, unshaken, deliberate, made him sit up straighter. He shut the folder slowly. The offer still unsigned inside. You sure about this? I'm sure. He nodded once. Not agreement, just acknowledgement. As he stood to leave, Maya said quietly, "You still have a choice, Kellerman." He stopped with his hand on the doorknob. "You can keep showing up for their system," she said, "or you can start standing up in it." He didn't turn around. But his hand lingered on the knob longer than it should have. Then, without a word, he left. Outside the room, Kellerman stood in the hallway for a long moment. The offer still sat in his briefcase, unsigned. His job was to move cases, not question them. But this one, something about the way she looked at him, like she'd already seen the whole board, gnawed at him. And for the first time in a long time, the question crept in, what if I've been on the wrong side this entire time? Captain Roger Hensley had seen his fair share of questionable arrests, but something about this one wouldn't let go. It clung to him like smoke that wouldn't wash off. It started that afternoon. His desk phone buzzed. No caller ID, no traceable line. "Captain Hensley," a woman's voice said, flat, clipped, without emotion. "This is a federal notification. The individual arrested at St. Haven University falls under Special Oversight Directive 421B. Immediate compliance expected. Access restricted." Then silence. No name, no agency, just static, and then the line went dead. Hensley stared at the receiver. Something tightened in his chest. He turned to his monitor and typed in Maya Ellison. "Access denied. Classified level 4. Unauthorized inquiry will be logged." He paused, then tried a different system. An older portal meant for federal coordination. Same result. Then something new flashed across the screen. Flagged personnel. Awaiting federal liaison. His stomach dropped. Only a handful of people in the country had that kind of shield. He leaned back slowly, staring at the screen. Outside his window, the station buzzed with the usual noise phones ringing, boots stomping, radios hissing, but it all felt distant. A few hours later, he walked down to Holding. Through the glass, she sat quietly. No handcuffs now, no motion. Still in the same navy blouse, same calm expression. Not agitated, not afraid. She was still, like she knew this wasn't the end of something, but the beginning. He asked for the room. She looked up as he entered. No surprise, no sarcasm, just acknowledgement. He placed a single glass of water on the table and sat across from her. No file. No recorder. Just two people, and a silence thick enough to choke on. "I need to ask you something," he said, voice low. Maya didn't respond. "I got a call. A warning. Then your file locked me out completely. And now I've got a federal liaison en route. They're not saying why." She still didn't speak, just watched. "I'm not here to play games," he added. "So who are you?" A small pause. Then Maya tilted her head just slightly, like weighing the worth of her answer. "You really want to know?" He nodded. She leaned in, not threatening, not smug, just present. "This arrest," she said quietly. "You'll wish it never happened." And just like that, the air shifted. Hensley felt it in his bones. It wasn't a threat. It was a mirror reflecting everything that had gone wrong in his precinct that he chose not to see. That night, he sat alone in his car in the back parking lot. He'd told Torres and Doyle to wrap up quietly, no additional paperwork without his say. They grumbled but obeyed. He sat there for a long time, smoking for the first time in a decade, letting the weight sink in. He pulled out an old tablet and typed in a name from memory, Deshaun Bell. A kid they'd booked last year, caught with narcotics outside a church. He remembered the video body cam showed nothing clear, but somehow a bag of fentanyl had ended up in the kid's jacket. He tried another name, Tina Vargas. Same story. Different day. Then he searched Precinct 7. Civilian complaints. Fabrication. 14 reports. All dismissed. All black or brown defendants. All tied to the same two names, Doyle and Torres. Hensley closed the tablet. His hands shook. He hadn't seen it, or maybe he had, but just didn't want to admit it. There was a time when he believed in the Shield, that they were the good guys. But now, he wasn't sure anymore. Back inside the precinct, he crossed paths with Doyle by the coffee machine. Captain Doyle said, casually stirring creamer. "So what's the deal with our little lecturer?" Some kind of drama queen with friends in high places? Hensley didn't answer. Doyle chuckled. She's quiet, I'll give her that. Most of them scream. But this one cold. Gives me the creeps. Hensley stared at him. You sure you didn't plant that evidence? The room stilled. Doyle raised an eyebrow. Excuse me, I asked. Hensley said again slowly, if you're absolutely sure that search was clean. Doyle's smile faded. I know what I'm doing, Captain. I hope so, Hensley replied, turning away. Because if you don't, you've just picked the wrong woman. Back in his office, Hensley sat in the dark for a long time. The system didn't need his belief to function. It needed his silence. And that silence had just been broken. It was almost poetic how calm Maya appeared that morning. Her wrists still bore the faint marks of the cuffs, yet her spine was straight, her gaze steady. She stood alone in the holding cell just off the courtroom, breathing quietly as the sound of footfalls echoed down the hallway. They think today is my sentencing, she thought, but it's actually theirs. Inside the courtroom, the air buzzed with something close to smug anticipation. Brent Doyle leaned back in his seat, arms crossed, lips curling into a half smile. Kyle Torres sat beside him, tapping a pen against his thigh, eyes fixed on the entrance like a predator waiting for prey. And behind them, District Attorney Vincent Hale adjusted his tie, nodding politely to the judge, barely hiding his satisfaction. She's got no defense, Doyle whispered to Torres. This'll be over before coffee. Torres smirked. She's smart, but not that smart. Then Maya was led into the room, still wearing the navy blue blazer from her guest lecture 2 days before. No one offered her a seat. She didn't seem to need one. Judge Karen Stillwell peered over her glasses. Dr. Maya Ellison, you've refused the plea deal presented. Are you prepared to represent yourself in full court? Before Maya could speak, the doors in the back opened with a sharp creak. In walked Kellerman. He didn't carry a briefcase. Just a folder in one hand and something different in his eyes' focus. Not the worn-down resignation he carried 2 days ago, but something steelier. I'll be representing Dr. Ellison, he said calmly. The judge raised a brow. I thought you recused yourself, Mr. Kellerman. I did. And I'm back, with federal authorization to present this. He opened the folder and walked straight to the bench, laying down a sealed document marked in bold red, Authorized Disclosure Level 4 clearance. Hale stood up, alarm flickering across his face. Your Honor, this isn't procedure. I'll be the judge of that, Stillwell snapped. She opened the folder. Silence. Then her fingers stiffened. Her eyes scanned the text again, slower this time. The courtroom, full of quiet murmurs just moments ago, seemed to freeze in place. She turned toward Maya, the expression on her face shifting from control to disbelief. Is this true? Maya stepped forward slowly. Her voice was calm, deliberate. My name is Dr. Maya Ellison. I am the current director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. You could have heard a pin drop. Doyle blinked, his mouth ajar. Torres straightened as if shot with cold water. Hale dropped his pen. Maya walked up to the center of the courtroom, every footstep landing like a gavel. You didn't just arrest a civilian. You handcuffed a federal officer with level 4 clearance, tampered with evidence, falsified reports, and obstructed an ongoing investigation into your own department. Torres stood up. She's bluffing. There's no way. Sit down, Mr. Torres Kellerman interrupted, voice firmer than anyone had heard from him in years. You'll have your turn. Hensley entered. Then Captain Hensley, the man who once doubted everything but now stood tall at the back of the room. He didn't speak, but he didn't need to. His presence alone confirmed the gravity of what had just unfolded. I warned you, Maya said, locking eyes with Doyle. You'll wish this arrest never happened. Doyle's face flushed with panic. I was following orders. From whom, Maya asked, gaze now moving to Hale. The DA said nothing. Kellerman turned to the judge. Your Honor, the charges against Dr. Ellison are baseless, politically motivated, and obstructive to a classified federal operation investigating precinct corruption in St. Haven. Judge Stillwell's voice faltered slightly. I'll need to review I've already sent the files to your secure server, Kellerman replied. The judge looked between the trembling DA and the woman standing at the center of the room, now lit not as a defendant, but as the one holding every ounce of truth. Then came the whisper from the gallery. She's the FBI director. And then another, oh my God, they really tried to frame her. It spread like fire through the room. Maya turned to the audience not to bask in the moment, but to ground herself. She wasn't here for applause. She was here for change. We're not done, she said softly. Today we begin talking about obstruction of justice, about who we protect and who we choose not to see. The room stayed still, as if afraid even to breathe. And just like that, the courtroom trap snapped shut, except the ones caught inside weren't the ones they expected. You could feel it, the way the air shifted in the courtroom the moment the judge called for a recess. Not the usual kind, but something heavier. Like the entire foundation of the room had cracked open under the weight of the truth. Judge Stillwell's voice was quiet but decisive. This court is temporarily adjourned pending federal review. Dr. Ellison, you're to be released immediately and reinstated to your official capacity. The guard who had brought Maya in looked confused, almost afraid to move. Maya gave a nod, calm as ever. "It's all right," she said, gently glancing at the young man. "You're just doing your job." He unlocked her cuffs, hesitant, almost reverent. When the final click echoed through the chamber, it was as if something had been set free. She turned slowly toward the rows of officers and attorneys who had watched her, laughed at her, dismissed her. Her gaze landed squarely on Doyle and Torres. They were already standing, too rigid, too pale. Maya stepped forward, her voice clear and firm. "Deputy U.S. Marshals are en route. But until then, Captain Hensley." Everyone turned. Captain Hensley, standing in the back, looked as if he'd aged a decade in the last 5 minutes. He didn't speak. He just walked forward slowly, each step deliberate, like it hurt. Then he reached into his jacket and took out his badge. He placed it quietly on the prosecution table. The courtroom murmured, stunned. Then he nodded at Maya. "You have jurisdiction," he said quietly. Maya looked over to 2 uniformed officers standing by the exit ones she had already cleared through federal background before her arrest. She didn't raise her voice, just pointed. "Cuff them." The 2 officers stepped forward. Doyle instinctively backed away. "Wait, hold on, this is some kind of misunderstanding?" he stammered. "I didn't know, no one told me." Torres didn't say a word. He knew. As the cuffs snapped around their wrists, the very sound they once relished using on others, the gallery erupted. A burst of applause, gasps, even some people standing up. For once, the noise wasn't for bloodlust. It was for justice. Doyle twisted around as they led him past Maya. "This isn't how it works," he hissed. "You can't just—" But Maya cut in, not loud, not angry, just final. "You were never in control," she said. "You were just loud." A quiet settled again. But this time it wasn't uncomfortable. It was reverent. Day. Hale, still seated, seemed frozen in place. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for a folder, only to pull back, unsure what to say, or if anything he said would matter now. Maya approached the judge. "With your permission," she said, "I'll be turning over all evidence of this precinct's misconduct to the Inspector General, including every case touched by these 2 men." Stillwell nodded slowly, the weight of it all sinking in. "Do what you must." Maya stepped away from the bench, took one last glance around the courtroom. She could feel every pair of eyes on her, not out of fear, but respect. And something else. Hope. She didn't smile. That wasn't what this moment called for. Instead, she turned to Kellerman, who stood at her side like he'd finally remembered what law was meant to feel like. "Ready?" she asked. He swallowed hard. "I am now." As they walked out of the courtroom together, a reporter outside was already live on camera shouting questions. Flashbulbs popped, microphones extended. But Maya didn't stop. Not yet. The story wasn't over. The room was colder than usual, or maybe it was just the tension. Maya sat at the far end of the long mahogany table inside the Department of Justice's oversight chamber. The polished surface reflected the weight of everything about to be said. Around her sat federal agents, oversight officials, and legal advisors. And at the opposite end, District Attorney Vincent Hale. He still had the audacity to smile. Maya didn't flinch. "Mr. Hale," she began calmly, "you've prosecuted 47 wrongful convictions in the past 9 years. 43 of those defendants were people of color. Shall I go on?" Hale scoffed. "I stand by every case. We don't choose who breaks the law." She slid a folder across the table. It landed with a quiet thud, but the sound cut through the room like thunder. "No, but you chose who to silence. These are records of coerced testimonies, falsified evidence logs, and confidential memos your office tried to bury. You didn't just ignore misconduct, you orchestrated it." Hale leaned forward, voice tight. "You're reaching." But Maya wasn't done. From her briefcase, she pulled out a USB drive and connected it to the screen behind her. Let's hear from someone you tried to erase. The video began. It was an interview clip, a man in his 50s, weathered but articulate. My name is Rodney Miller. I was sentenced to 18 years for a robbery that never happened. The DA's office suppressed footage from a traffic cam that would have cleared me. I lost my wife. My kids grew up thinking I was a criminal. Gasps filled the room. Rodney's voice cracked. I wasn't a perfect man, but I wasn't a thief, and they knew that. Silence. Maya turned off the video and looked directly at Hale. Rodney is just one. There are dozens. Men and women who never stood a chance, not against your ambition. One oversight member, Judge Ortega, spoke up. Do you have corroboration? Before Maya could answer, Kellerman rose from his seat in the corner. He had been silent until now. Yes, he said, voice steady. I worked under Hale. I covered for him. I helped redact files and steer cases away from scrutiny. It made me sick, but I said nothing until now. The room shifted. Hale shot him a glare. You little coward, Kellerman admitted. But not anymore. Hale stood abruptly, knocking his chair back. You can't let this circus smear my name. Sit down, Mr. Hale, a federal agent ordered. Maya continued, unwavering. There's more. A full report has been submitted. If you need additional evidence, we can open sealed logs from the last 3 years. A beat passed. Then Judge Ortega looked to the lead official. This warrants a full federal inquiry. The chair nodded. Hale shook his head in disbelief. You people are making a mistake. Maya stood, calm, composed. You didn't think it was a mistake when you handcuffed me in front of my students. You didn't think it was a mistake when you let officers plant drugs on innocent people. But now the mirrors pointed at you. And suddenly it's a mistake. She took a breath. You weren't enforcing the law. You were building an empire on the backs of the voiceless. A pause. Then she added softly, It ends today. The door opened. 2 federal agents stepped in, walking toward Hale. He backed up instinctively. Defiance etched into every step. You'll hear from my lawyers, he barked. We already have, one agent replied. Hale looked around the room one last time, but no one met his gaze. As he was led out, Kellerman turned to Maya. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. She nodded. Speaking now still matters. Outside the chamber, reporters were already gathering. The leak had started the moment Maya entered the building. Cameras flashed. Microphones jutted forward. But she didn't speak to them, not yet. Because this wasn't about press conferences or public approval. This was about systemic rot ripped out by its roots. And Maya Ellison, the woman once paraded in handcuffs, now stood at the center of a reckoning she had orchestrated with precision, restraint, and truth. By the time Maya stepped onto the national stage, the room was already humming. The studio lights at BNC News were warm, but the tension was ice cold. Sitting across from her was Lorraine Dowell, a veteran anchor known for making the powerful stumble. But Maya, she sat still, composed. Her dark blue suit was sharp, but her expression was softer than anyone expected from a woman just days removed from handcuffs and courtroom chaos. Dr. Ellison Lorraine began gently. The world has seen the footage, the arrest, the silence, the reveal. What made you say so little? Maya offered the faintest smile. Sometimes, she said slowly, when the noise is too loud. Silence speaks louder. The segment rolled footage from the now viral arrest students, gasping Maya's calm face, the sudden twist in court when Kellerman revealed the truth. Lorraine let the clip breathe. She didn't interrupt. She didn't need to. America was already watching. On the corner of the screen, hashtags flashed like wildfire. Hashtag Director Ellison. Framed by cops. Silence. Is power. In a park in Birmingham, a group of veterans stood shoulder to shoulder watching the interview from a phone balanced on a bench. One of them, a black woman in her 60s, shook her head. She never yelled, she whispered. Didn't have to. She walked in like she knew something the world didn't. And she did. On college campuses, young people rewound the moment over and over again when the courtroom fell silent and Maya's voice cracked through like thunder on dry ground. Now let's talk about obstruction of justice. One tweet read, "She didn't flinch. Not when they arrested her. Not when they laughed." She waited. And then she flipped the entire system in one sentence. My God. In homes across the country, survivors of wrongful convictions sat with hands clenched, tears streaming not because of pain, but recognition. A woman in Richmond posted, "My brother did 6 years for a crime he didn't commit. The DA who locked him up, Vincent Hale. Same man Maya exposed. This matters." At a vigil held outside the courthouse, a mother stood before candles spelling out truth, holding a photo of her teenage son. He was sentenced under Hale. Maya's courage gave me the strength to say his name out loud again. Inside the Department of Justice, an emergency meeting was being scheduled. More than 60 cases previously prosecuted under DA Hale's office were now flagged. Maya had submitted a preliminary list, 47 names each marked with red tags. Most were black. Many were still behind bars. Back in the studio, Lorraine leaned forward. "You've shaken the nation, Director Ellison, but there's a growing chant people want more. Some say this is just the beginning. Do you plan to lead a wider investigation?" Maya looked straight into the camera, not at Lorraine, not at the producers, but at the people watching from living rooms, hospital beds, prison cells. "I didn't choose this moment," she said, "but I am choosing what comes after." There was no applause, no music, just silence again. But this time, it roared. In the following hours, Kellerman released his written testimony to the press, admitting to years of silence under pressure from Hale's office. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He simply ended with, "I was a coward." Maya wasn't. The ripple spread further than anyone could have expected. From professors to pastors, truckers to tech workers, America was talking. Not just about Maya, but about the system that cracked when one woman stood still and let truth do the speaking. At a small diner in Baton Rouge, 2 elderly black women clinked their coffee mugs. "She didn't need a fist," one said. She used her presence. And back in the holding cell where Maya had once sat, the woman who'd recognized her from Kandahar was now writing a letter. "You saved my daughter in war," it read. "Now you're saving daughters here. Thank you." The steps of the Justice Department had never felt this heavy before. A podium stood at the center, flanked by the seal of the United States and a row of flags that had seen more silence than truth. Behind it stood Maya Ellison, not in handcuffs, not behind a table, but in front of the world. The crowd below wasn't just reporters. There were students from St. Haven, veterans from Kandahar, victims of wrongful convictions. And somewhere near the front, a little girl holding a cardboard sign, "My daddy's case is on her list." Cameras clicked as Maya stepped up. The murmurs died. She paused, not out of nerves but respect for the silence that had once protected her. And then she spoke. "For days, I said nothing. I let them shout. I let them accuse. Because sometimes, they need to hear themselves echo. A beat passed, and then clarity. I was silent because they needed to shout at themselves. But today, I'm speaking. Not just for myself, but for every voice they buried, every name they crossed off, every file they sealed." Behind her, the FBI director's seal gleamed. To her left stood Kellerman, head lowered but present. To her right, the Deputy Attorney General nodded solemnly. Maya continued. 12 formal investigations are now active into misconduct, into fabrication, into systemic targeting. We have reopened 300 case files across 4 counties, and we're just getting started. Gasps swept through the crowd. But Maya didn't raise her voice. She didn't wave her hands or lean on anger. She just stood still, letting the words do the work. Justice isn't loud. It doesn't kick in doors. It walks in, with proof in one hand and patience in the other. As she spoke, monitors behind her began cycling through black and white mugshots. Each face represented a life unjustly altered by the very system meant to protect it. One of them was a boy, only 17 when sentenced. Another, a grandmother misidentified at a traffic stop. And then, names. So many names. Maya's eyes flicked toward the press. "I know some of you will ask why I didn't reveal myself sooner," she said. "Because shadows gave me cover, long enough to shine a light that couldn't be ignored." There was no applause yet, no grand crescendo, just eyes wide open, listening. She closed her folder and stepped aside. The deputy AG came forward, made it official. Dr. Maya Ellison's authority is hereby expanded to lead the Independent Oversight Task Force on Racial Justice and Prosecutorial Integrity. Her tenure begins immediately. Still, Maya didn't smile. Later that afternoon, the cameras were gone. Maya returned to her office. It was quiet, almost too quiet. The kind of quiet that used to scare her. Not anymore. She crossed the room to a wooden cabinet, opened the top drawer, pulled out a framed photo wrapped in an old soft cloth. Her mother, in uniform, standing proudly in front of a courthouse in Alabama. The same courthouse where she'd once been turned away. The irony wasn't lost. Maya walked to the wall and hung the photo gently just above her desk. Under it, she whispered, "Justice." Finally. Outside her window, a small group had gathered. Not to protest, but to hold candles. No chanting, just presence. Presence that had once been silence. Now it was a movement. If this story moved you even just a little, take a moment to breathe it in. Because Maya's silence wasn't weakness. It was power. And when she finally spoke, it wasn't for revenge. It was for truth, for justice, and for every voice that's been ignored too long. At Mr. Mac's Stories, we believe stories like this matter. Stories that uncover injustice, that uplift quiet strength, and that remind us you don't have to shout to be heard. You just have to stand. So if this resonated with you, please give the video a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and most importantly, hit that subscribe button to join us here at Mr. Mac's Stories. Your support doesn't just help the algorithm, it fuels our team. It tells us this work matters, and it keeps stories like this alive. Because here we don't just tell stories, we remember them, we carry them, and we pass them on. This is Mr. Mac's Stories, and some stories they stay with you forever.